Good morning, friends. In this video, I'll be discussing with you about the essential functions and duties of a government and also about the key factors to judge the performance of a government. See, how do we judge the performance of a government, whether it is by the loans it grants to different groups or by the loans it waives, whether it is by the free services and goods that it delivers, whether it is by the subsidies it sanctions, or by the quality of administration it provides, or the quality of governance, or whether it is by the social security that it provides, both state and national security, and whether it is by the transparency it provides on its dealings, assurances that it makes in its manifesto, or by the achievements that it demonstrates. So different people judge the performance in different ways. So the level of knowledge and understanding matters here. So only 1 out of 100 or say 200 people may be capable of making this analysis. So we should always keep in mind that the money that the government handles is public money. So it is our money, it is everybody's money, and spending your money for your money for my welfare or my money for your welfare, it is not a judicious way of incurring the expenditure. Similarly, raising heavy loans and spending on the welfare is also not the right way. So spending money on the vote-catching schemes also will not have a permanent, the enduring effect on the real welfare of the state. So everything should be optimal. There has to be a right mix or optimal mix of money and activities, and nothing should be spent extravagantly. The principles of orthodox finance have to be borne in mind by the government at every stage of incurring the public money. Pilferage is to be avoided totally. Everything should be for everybody, and there has to be equal distribution of benefits and services without confining it to the benefit of a limited group. So the government is not the owner, but only a custodian, and it is accountable for every action and reaction. So a government is nothing but one big giant community, say. And like every community, the government also must be governed. So let us study about the main purpose and functions of the government now. See, basically, we see there are 3 forms of government like democracy, autocracy, and oligarchy. But here we are focusing our discussion only to a democratic government. See, very frequently in the social media or newspapers, we come across news about a new bill being introduced by the government, a new policy, the demonetization or GST or abolition of Article 370, about the Viksit Bharat scheme, the Pakka Houses scheme, access to electricity, water and LPG for all, free medical treatments through Ayushman Bharat, the financial help to farmers, assistance to women through the Matru Yojana. Similarly, new law on the triple talaq, the Nari Shakti, the steps against terrorism, about the fuel price, about the various social welfare schemes. So all pertaining to the union government. Similarly, we also discussed in the social media about the state policies like the Shakti scheme, Annabhagya scheme, the Griha Jyoti scheme, Griha Lakshmi schemes, and so on. So these conversations, they always revolve around politics. So what went right or what went wrong. So a government has to take care or manage a country or a state. So every government has its own manifesto or policies to ensure effective governance. So the government is responsible for the social welfare, for the law and order, for the defense of the country, the financial affairs of the country. It has to ensure security of its people. It must manage an efficient police force, a fair legal system, and a good defense force. Similarly, the civic communities and the infrastructure, good social welfare schemes, health and development of the people, also take steps to protect the environment, take steps to protect and clean its local and international waters. It has to set up the wildlife sanctuaries and invest in the renewable sources of energy and power. So a government must effectively manage the country's economy, not compromising on any of these basic requirements and not heavily taxing the people, but by managing the government commercial undertakings for its profit, by managing inflation, by managing sufficient foreign reserves, and by stimulating foreign investments. So, good governance, what is good governance? It is the key to a nation's progress. So, a government should provide a transparent and accountable administration which works for the welfare of the common citizen. Citizen first. That should be the guiding principle. Government should be brought closer to our citizens and it should be made active participants in, they have to be made active participants in the governance process. Simplification of procedures and processes is a must. Doing away with the cumbersome and outdated legislation, faster and transparent systems, redressal of public grievances on highest priority, using the technology, latest technology to bridge the gap between the government and the citizens. So these are some of the important factors of good governance. And the level or say the percentage up to which our governments, whether it is state or center, they are able to manage these basic objectives, what I said now, within the revenue that it can generate, without going for heavy borrowings and without heavily taxing the people, it decides the quality of governance. Remember, providing free benefits out of the heavy borrowings is also not a healthy symptom of good governance. But ironically, no major country or no major government across the world has ever been able to do this. So every government, almost every government is in debt, and in some cases it is beyond a normal level, and in some cases it is little better. So generally following factors will push a government to heavy debt situation. They are one, the so-called popularistic vote-catching schemes, or it can be they carried forward debts from the previous years or the previous government, poor revenue generation schemes, poor revenue collection mechanisms, heavy pilferages, poor performance of the commercial enterprises of the government, the central government. These are some of the important factors which the government has to focus to avoid heavy debts. And the central government today it collects about 60% of the total government revenue generated in the country, and remaining 40% is attributable to the states. The central government's major receipts are number one, the taxes such as income tax, GST, customs duty, excise duty, etc. And number two, the non-tax receipts such as the profits and dividends earned from the public sector undertaking. And three, the interest receipts on its lendings, the government's lending. And number four, the capital receipts such as the disinvestment proceeds from selling the government shareholding in the public sector undertaking. See, in the year 2022-23, about 86% of the total receipts of the central government, it was from tax revenue. And about 11 to 12% non-tax revenue and other 2% from the disinvestment. So the central government, it spends on its departmental activities, it spends on its defense, internal security, the promotion of the industry, on trade and commerce, poverty elevation, social security, infrastructure needs, including the national highways, flyovers, bridges, railways, and so on. So central government's receipts, they have consistently fallen short of the expenditure schemes, expenditure plans, and the gaps have been funded through borrowings, the fiscal deficit. So this has led to the increasing debt levels and the higher interest expenditure, and they reduce the scope for the capital expenditure. So disinvestment has become the dominant source of capital receipts for the central government. So let us study the debt to GDP ratio of the government of India for the last 3-4 years. In 2019-20, the central government's debt to GDP ratio stood at 75%. It was 88.5% in 2020-21, 83.8% in 21-22, 81% in 22-23. And it has certainly come down, it has improved, it has come to 58.2% in 23-24, and it is expected to be 57.1% in the financial year 24-25 and 24-25. And of course, the coronavirus pandemic had the impact in 2020-21. So the central government debt or the liabilities, including the external debt at current exchange rate in absolute terms, after adjusting the cash balances available with the government, it is estimated at 172.37 lakh crores as of 31st March 2024 and expected to be 187.35 lakh. 187.35 lakh crores as of 31st March 2025. So what is the debt to GDP ratio? Let us understand. The debt to GDP ratio is the total debt of the country divided by the total GDP of the country into 100 because it is expressed as a percentage. So this ratio, namely the debt to GDP ratio, it compares a country's public debt to its gross domestic product GDP, and it indicates a country's ability to pay back its debts or otherwise. So higher the debt to GDP ratio, it indicates that the country cannot pay back its debt. Higher is the risk of default, which will definitely cause a financial panic in the domestic and international market. So such a scenario, it slows down the economic growth, it discourages the creditors from lending money, or the creditors may demand higher interest rates when lending. So generally, a lower debt to GDP ratio, it indicates a strong financial footing of the country. It indicates that the country is producing more than its debts. So reducing debt levels, it is crucial for securing a better credit rating so that the companies can get access to the finance at cheaper rates. Debt to GDP ratio in Indian state, let us see in 2023-24. Indian states with a high debt to GDP ratio include Arunachal Pradesh, it is 53%, at the top, followed by Punjab, Nagaland, Manipur, Meghalaya, Himachal Pradesh, Bihar, even Mizoram, West Bengal, Rajasthan, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, etc. And conversely, the states in India that have low debt to GDP ratios, it includes Chhattisgarh, followed by Karnataka, Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Odisha. Odisha, it is only 13.1%. But in the case of Karnataka, although it is fair now, it is good now, we have to see the impact of the 5 guarantees after a few months. And so why do states see an increase in this debt to GDP ratio? It is mainly because of the following reasons. Number one, spending heavily on the infrastructure development, social welfare programs, and public services from the borrowed funds. And number two, the budget deficits, meaning the revenue generation being less than the expenditure, or it can be due to the economic shocks and unforeseen circumstances like natural disasters. It can be due to the political decisions leading to the populist spending. And limited revenue raising powers of the state governments also can be one of the very important reasons. And the demographic factors also add to this. So when we say the demographic factors, I mean, it can be limited interest, industrialization, the rugged terrain, the scattered population, etc. So, what are the strategies to improve the high debt to GDP ratios? That is to bring the ratios down. They are basically to reduce the budget deficits, to curtail the debt accumulation. Number two, you have to boost the revenue through effective taxation policies by widening the demand. You will have to implement the responsible, prudent borrowing schemes or practices, and refinancing also should be done so that the existing debt can be available at lower rate interest rates. So refinance the existing debt to secure the lower interest rate. And similarly, invest in the productive sectors to stimulate the GDP growth, to stimulate the profits, dividends. So these strategies can definitely improve the credit ratings, whether it is state or central government, lower borrowing costs, and it can also ensure the long-term fiscal stability. Okay. So thank you, friends. Thank you very much.